You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 393 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer. I will be your host, and I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin, and he's high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
It's going well, Jeremy. Thanks for asking. Bears win. Cubs win. Blackhawks win. When was the last time you could say those three things in a row on the same day?
If all three of those teams are playing, then it must be the end of the regular season for Major League Baseball. And here we are. We've completed another season being here every single week for the podcast. This time, the Cubs, it's been a long time since we've been able to say this. The Cubs are in the postseason as they will be playing in the wildcard round. They will be playing the San Diego Padres. We'll do our playoff preview. We will start by recapping how the Cubs got there. And we'll talk about the news of the week, obviously leading with Cade Horton's injury and so much more to help us unpack all the news of the week, to talk all things Cubs. You know him from his work at NBC Chicago and, of course, his many appearances here on this podcast. He's a longtime friend of the show, James Neveau. James, thanks for taking time out to talk Cubs with us tonight.
Yes, it is once again to ruin your evenings. I apologize to the general public, and hopefully I don't ruin Jeremy and Pat's nights as well.
It's always a pleasure when we get to talk Cubs, sports, and life with James Neveau, and we will do that today. Pat, let's start with the week that was, and we'll do a quick recap as all eyes, everyone's listening to this, thinking about the postseason games that are about to happen, thinking about the wild card. So we'll quickly recap this.
I can sum it up in 45 seconds.
Oh, do so. Please do.
Cubs dropped 2 out of 3 to the Mets, but come back to sweep the hapless Cardinals. Big stories of the week are Seiya Suzuki's bat came back, and he hit more home runs in a 72-hour period than I think he did in the previous 2 months. So that was nice. PCA is hitting again. Kyle Tucker is back from his absence, and although wasn't hitting particularly well, at least was hitting and was in the lineup 3 days in a row. So the bats seem to be on the uptick. The big news, though, of the week and the bad news of the week is that Cade Horton was injured in a start he had this week. A start that he might not even had to make had it not been for the fact that Cubs flailed so badly in Cincinnati last weekend. And still needed to claim home field advantage, which they did, but it came at a cost because he has fractured a rib. Wow. Yeah, and he is out for the next playoff series and possibly the one after that. Meanwhile, Imanaga looked really bad. I was at the game Thursday and giving up a lot of home runs. And he's now going to have to take a center role in this rotation. And we'll get into the playoff rotation later, I'm sure. But everything is when you lose your number one playoff pitcher, who's had a Jake Arrieta 2015 type second half. It really it's going to put them to the test, let's say.
It's devastating, James, that they've lost Cade Horton at this crucial time of the year.
Yeah, and it really came kind of at an inopportune time when you have two guys who are really key to your postseason hopes that are struggling in the way that Shota Imanaga and even Matthew Boyd are. And I know Boyd has had, a few good starts in the month of September, did have a few rough ones against Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay, but definitely not the Matthew Boyd we were seeing in like the first half of the season specifically. And then, as you mentioned, Pat, Shota has been just a really struggling.
A shell of himself. Really.
I was going to say a shell, but like it's been a lot of the solo home run variety, but just like not locating pitches well and not pitching with the same verve and the same confidence that we're kind of used to him, pitching with. And
sadly, they're solo home runs, but they're multiples of solo home runs.
And it's also coming during a stretch where the Cubs are really having difficulty hitting the ball. And so you just felt it every single time he went out there that he was trying like hell not to give up home runs because he was trying to work around the margins, and that obviously was not working out for him. And frankly, right now, the Cubs are in a position where they're going to have to ask themselves, like, who's taking the ball in game one? And I think kind of by, default, it has to be either Boyd or Imanaga, but it's not like you can feel
nobody's excited about
that right now. Yeah, exactly. Like I would have, even if it had been like Cade Horton, I'd have been like, well, he's a young guy, he's pitched more innings than he has at any point in his career. But at least, like you said, Jeremy, he's having this like statistically incredible stretch and just pitching very dominantly and looking really good and giving you a lot of hope for the future. And then out of left field, he just deals with that injury that took 4 days to diagnose a broken rib. And here we are. So I think that the big question I have now is, where does that leave the Cubs rotation? And is there literally anybody that you can put out there on the mound in game one that's not going to have you reaching for the Rolaids by the third inning?
I have some ideas on that. Before we get into the rotation, though, can I just point out something? I was at the game today as well, and it's always fun to be at Cardinals games when the Cardinals are getting
bad?
swept. Yeah, and are bad.
Yep.
And I had this flashback to 10 years ago next week when we were bombing home runs off them left and right. 6 of them, I believe. Right, Jeremy? We were at that game.
That's about right.
Kyle Schwarber was knocking them on top of the scoreboard and things of that nature. And it was just a shame knowing that won't happen next week because the Cardinals had been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs before they even got to town. You know how that goes. They just didn't deserve it, frankly. But
I like how nobody wanted to win that third wild card spot, and the Cardinals just wanted it a little bit less than anybody else.
Yeah. Today, the Cubs did something interesting. You know, as they're playing around with roster construction, a couple things happened this week. The Carlos Santana agreed to take an option, and the Cubs are going to keep Moises Ballesteros on the playoff roster, which I think is a smart move. I think they need his bat. He's been hitting the ball really well. Today, they even started him at catcher. I don't think they would do that in the playoffs, but I think they're just testing that out to see, like, you know, how that would go. And it was okay. I mean, he called a decent game from what I could tell. It's just a little trouble on some high pitches that he's not a tall gentleman. So like reaching for them, but yeah, I mean, he's going to be on the playoff roster and that's important. The other playoff roster note was that with Cade Horton being placed on the injured list, the Cubs called up Jordan Wicks, and I thought that meant that they were going to start him today, or at least use him significantly, just to eat innings, so that in the playoffs they don't have to, you know, because the playoffs are starting in like 2 days. You know, you're on a Sunday, they start on Tuesday, and I thought that the idea was to have him pitch several innings today, and in fact he did. He pitched 3 innings at the end of the game, pitched effectively, and got the save. But what surprised me a little bit is they started Assad, and once they had it clinched, the playoffs that is, I figured they let him go 2 innings, maybe 3 innings, but instead they let him go 5 innings. He threw 79 pitches. So I know he's kind of a horse, but still, if you're using Assad for 79 pitches on a Sunday, obviously he's not going to be pitching Tuesday and probably even Wednesday at all. So would he, I mean, his first availability would be out of the bullpen on a Thursday? That seemed like an odd thing to force yourself into. It seemed like they could have used Drew Pomeranz for an inning and somebody else for an inning. And, you know, they've got Andrew Kittredge could have pitched an inning. I mean, you got 100 guys who could have pitched, you know, who could have thrown like 15 pitches each on a Sunday and still been ready on Tuesday. So the fact that they kind of wore him out in order to get through the game, I don't know what that, I mean, it's almost like, do you even want him on the playoff roster now? Like, what's the point? I don't understand why they did that. So I guess final rosters are probably due. Playoff rosters would be due tomorrow.
You would think probably Tuesday morning, right?
Tuesday morning, yeah. So I don't know what that means with regard to that, but you know, this is a 3-game series. We're not used to these 3-game series, and we speculated as to, well, how many starters do you really need in a 3-game series? Luckily, the Cubs keep shedding starters, so you know
not gonna be
they don't have that problem anymore. But it does beg the question, like, you know, when you're looking at who you're going to keep and who you're not going to keep. So,
well, I don't want to jump the gun, but I have thoughts on like how many starters I think they're going to keep. But I'm going to let Jeremy steer the ship.
The answer is 4, isn't it? It's 4.
It is 4, right? Like it has.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because the problem is you can't count on Imanaga getting out of the 3rd inning.
Oh. No.
And
depending on how the wind's blowing that day.
Yeah. And I think the winds will be blowing in so far, but you know, that can change. But yeah, if you're talking Boyd in game 1 and Imanaga in game 2, and then game 3 is either Colin Ray or Tyon, one of those guys may end up pitching in game 1 or 2. I mean, you in a 3-game series, you don't have the luxury of being able to kind of like punt a game.
You also don't have the luxury of, trying to save bullets for a potential Brewers series either, because that would start on Saturday. So you also have to keep that in mind, and probably a reason why you're going to see a guy like Assad not be on that roster for the wild card series, because in all likelihood, you're going to need him to eat some innings if you can advance to play Milwaukee on Saturday.
He might have to start a game against Milwaukee at the rate you're going.
Right.
Definitely. Well,
and he pitched well today, I'll say.
They do have an extra day off in that series because they don't want MLB going up against the NFL like their primetime slate.
Thank God for the NFL.
Yeah, they're going to move game 2 of the NLDS to Monday instead of Sunday. So the Cubs would get an extra day off in that case.
Yeah. So they get Friday off and they get Sunday off. That would be a huge help, actually.
While the pitching is obviously first and foremost, looking at, you mentioned Boyd, Imanaga, and Tyone or Ray for your third game.
Mm-hmm. Both of whom, by the way, lately have been pitching better than Imanaga.
Absolutely.
I'm totally willing to hear them as to hear Colin Ray pitching ahead of Imanaga at this point. I could see that happening. I'd be okay.
I think you'd probably rather have Shota Imanaga pitch at Wrigley Field than you would want him to pitch up in Milwaukee, I would think. I think that the odds are Craig Counsell's probably going to look at that and go, probably would want him starting game 3. That's kind of what I see for him. Like if they have to go to a game 3, and I know we're talking about this scenario where the Cubs actually beat the Padres, and I'm finding it hard to convince myself that they should be a favorite in the series based on the way that they've been playing. But then again, it's not like San Diego went and ran away and hit either. I mean, they were in the National League West race until the very end, but that was also because the Dodgers didn't seem particularly interested in being able to hold the lead down the stretch. So I honestly have no idea what's going to happen in the National League because so many of those teams just kind of limp to the finish line.
And before we get into the Padres pitching, I think just generally, as I was going through the last couple of days, the Padres season and where they're at, one thing that jumps off the page is that they don't play as well on the road. They're not a good road team, which advantage Cubs.
And the Cubs won 50 games at Wrigley this year.
Yes, they did. Another thing that jumped off the page is thankfully, all their starting pitchers are right-handed. Because I'm telling you right now, if they had 3 lefties in their rotation, we'd be in big trouble. As much as I like Bush and PCA and these guys, they even now they get eaten up by lefties in a way that they don't by righties. Like they're much
mediocre lefties too. Like lefties, you shouldn't be impressed.
So that's a good, not break, but it's a good matchup for the Cubs.
Thank God Jose Quintana is hurt right now.
Yeah, the Padres pitchers, their starting pitchers are, I think, better across the board than the Cubs starting pitchers. I think we're not going to have an advantage in any game from a starting pitching standpoint. And they have this notoriously deep bullpen because they traded a lot of great young prospects to build this super weapon bullpen. So they've got the ability, if they do get a lead, to go to their bullpen in the 6th, 7th innings with guys who would be closers for the Cubs. They got 4 or 5 guys in their bullpen who would be our best relief pitcher probably, or close to it. I mean, depending on what you think of Keller at any given moment, right? Or how Palencia is doing. But so they've got a really strong pitching staff, I think, in that regard. What I was a little surprised about, because, I know generally who their players are, who their, starting lineup is and how good they are. And Tatis and Machado and Cronenworth and, Merrill and people like that. I was looking at their numbers, though. A lot of down years or just mid years for Padres. Catchers aren't really that good. You look around their lineup and they've got a lot of flaws, frankly, in their lineup, which made me feel good because, we spent a lot of time fixated on our own flaws. But Xander Bogaerts isn't, what he used to be. He's not as good as Dansby Swanson, for example, right? Jake Cronenworth isn't as good as Nico Horner, Luis Arraez, although he's their first baseman, he's kind of like Nico Horner at the plate, but I'd rather Michael Bush, if you're asking me which one I wanted, and I'd take our catcher over, Diaz or whatever. And, you look at their outfield, and of course Tatis is what we wished Tucker was. If Tucker was healthy, he might be, right? And I don't think he's quite there right now, but you get the idea. Jackson Merrill is like a poor man's PCA, as long as PCA is not playing like he did from August 1st to September 15th when he was, really in a rut. But I mean, Jackson Merrill's probably overall doesn't have the kind of credentials that PCA does. And, Gavin Sheets, I mean, is he a better player than Seiya Suzuki? I don't think so. And Ramon Laureano is out. So that's, their left fielder is out. So that helps a lot. And so I would take, frankly, Ian Happ over whoever they're going to put in left field. So when it's just funny if you would, for as much as we've been concerned about the Cubs hitting all year, Cubs lineup is like significantly better. We have the edge at most positions over the Padres. Whereas when it comes to pitching currently, especially with the Horton injury and with the Boyd Imanaga regression to the mean, we don't have advantages in the pitching staff. So I don't know where that leaves you in a 3-game series. The thing about such a short series is that
it's random. It's all random.
We can have a much better lineup, but that doesn't mean Manny Machado's not going to hit 3 home runs in game 1, right?
It's all random.
Nor does it mean that Imanaga is not going to pitch, 6 1/3 innings and only give up 1 run, and the Cubs are going to win that game. I mean, so much can happen in that type of scenario. So, I don't think anybody, no matter how hard they try to, be forecast this, is really knows definitively what's going to happen. But it is interesting what the matchups look like. I think it's worth. We
do this podcast every week. We spend the first 2 months of the season saying, got to look at the larger sample size. Don't get too crazy about the small sample sizes. And then we're looking at the large sample sizes just in time to say, throw the large sample sizes out the window. It's all about randomness in a 3-game series.
Actually, the first 2 months of the season were a lot better than the full season, as it turns out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy that I've seen so much prognostication already about the wild card series and who's going to have the edge between the Yankees and the Red Sox, or the Guardians going to be able to continue the way they've been playing. And it's like, anybody who claims to know that is what's going to happen is absolutely crazy, dude. Literally, it's a best of 3 series. Anything in the world can happen. The Miami Marlins made the Chicago Cubs look like absolute chumps in 2020, and nobody gave the Marlins a shot to win that series. And they came into Chicago and they embarrassed the Cubs. You do not know
like 5 hits in 2 games.
What's going to happen? Absolutely. And I wouldn't rule out the Reds beating the Dodgers. Reds, just a weird they're a team that could scare me a little bit. Before we got
online here, we talked about that series, and I'm like, I've been kind of beating the drum for the Reds pitching staff the last month or two, and how impressed I am with their young pitchers, and they continue to impress. And they can slow down that Dodgers offense, and it would be interesting. In a 3-game series,
the Dodgers bullpen is terrible. It's really bad.
And when Hunter Green is going and Liddell, I mean, those guys can throw. They can, or what do the kids say? They can shove, right? So,
yeah.
No, it is, the Cubs beating the Mets. The Cubs beating the Mets at 1 game is all it took. And as it is funny that they didn't make the playoffs. Their collapse is pretty spectacular. Although
what was that stat I sent you, Jeremy, on where they started, and do you have that?
I'll pull that up here. But it's a double-edged sword, because while I enjoy laughing at the fact that the Mets did not make the playoffs, the monkey's paw effect here is that we get the Reds in here, and it's absolutely terrifying. To all the points you just made, it's absolutely terrifying that the Reds are here, and they could absolutely beat the Dodgers, just like the Cubs could absolutely beat the Padres here. The New York Mets.
I think the Cubs could beat the Brewers, for the record, too.
I do too. I think that's a really good matchup. If we get to I would hate to play the Phillies. They're like the bizarro Cubs, and it would just crap.
Yep.
Yeah, it would be the worst matchup. So if you get past the Padres, like
Then book your plane ticket to Philadelphia because the Milwaukee series is just going to be a pro forma like rubber stamp. We're going to crush them.
And don't think that the Milwaukee Brewer fans won't take advantage of selling the tickets to that DS.
I've already inquired, actually.
Yeah, to a bunch of Cubs fans that'll take the drive.
I've already made my my offers.
Here's the stat you were talking about, Pat, from Jeff Passan's Twitter. The New York Mets lost and will miss the playoffs. At one point, they were 45-24. They end the season at 83-79, an all-time disintegration from the best record in the game to out of the postseason.
They had like the third worst record in baseball the last 4 months.
And how active were they at the trade deadline?
Right.
Extremely.
Yeah.
Checkmate, Jed Hoyer says. He says he didn't need to make a bunch of moves at the deadline. Look what happened.
Right.
Look what happened.
Hey,
Got
look
plenty
at
of
what the
pitchers.
Guardians did. They sold at the deadline, lost two of their best pitchers, and won the division.
I said this last year. I'm going to say it again this year. With a division that bad, it is so hard to figure out if either of those teams are any good.
I thought the Detroit Tigers were a hell of a team, and then all of a sudden the second half of that season hit, and they turned into a pumpkin almost at the same rate as the Mets did. They just got lucky enough to still limp into the playoffs.
Well, luckily the Guardians won like 40 out of 41 or whatever the year. It was ridiculous.
Just an utterly insane stretch. Like that was like Bob Gibson 68-ish, man. That just looking up and literally them winning every single game, I never in a million years would have predicted that.
So can I give you my take on the Padres starting rotation?
Yeah, let's talk about so we've talked a lot about the Cubs rotation. Let's talk about the Padres rotation, then I want to get into the Cubs.
We keep trying to yank the reins out of Jeremy's hand, which I feel like we do every single time.
Hey, season's over. I'm tired. We're all tired. It's been a long season. Let's talk playoffs. Yeah.
So Nick Pivetta, who's going to be the game one starter, is basically the guy who, like Justin Steele in a Cy Young type of year, we would say, it'd be great to have him as your game one starter. He's that guy, 2.87 ERA, 13-5, but with, a whip under 1, et cetera. I mean, he's a stud, and that's who we get to face in the first game. In the second game, it'll probably be Michael King, who's sort of our Matthew Boyd but in a different way, like in an alternate universe where Matthew Boyd was good but got hurt and missed like 3 months and then came back and was healthy at the end. That's Michael King. He's probably going into the year, they would project as their best pitcher, but he was out for a long time. Now he's back, and that could cut a couple different ways. Maybe he won't be as sharp, or maybe we're just going to catch him at the wrong time, and then we'll have this podcast a little bit earlier than we expected because we'll be done on Wednesday. And then they've got like 3 different options for game 3, if there is one, if we don't sweep them or vice versa. They've got Dylan Cease, who's kind of like their Imanaga. It's like, they thought he was good and he just hasn't pitched that great. I mean, he's been okay. You make a lot of excuses like, well, he's pitched better than his numbers. But at some point, once you've started, 32 games, your numbers are your numbers, And,
yep.
And his FIP is way better than his ERA, but, his whip is bad. And he just, gives up a lot of base runners and hits, and that's what happens. So they may or may not use him in game 3. They might go with Randy Vasquez, the young guy, the young pitcher, who's sort of like what we thought Cade Horton might have been had he not been better than what we thought he would have been, like a really good number 3 pitcher kind of guy. And if they don't do that, they could go to Yu Darvish, who's sort of their Jamison Taillon, like the crafty veteran. And if they want somebody with some playoff experience who knows Chicago pretty well and could come into Wrigley Field and at least maybe go in, not with the thought he was going to pitch the whole game, but maybe get him 3 innings or 4 innings in a game 3. They could go that route as well, so they actually have 5 pitchers, starting pitchers, who I could see them utilizing in a 3-game series in a variety of ways. Whereas I feel like the Cubs have 4 pitchers, starting pitchers, who they could utilize, but their pitchers are just each one of their pitchers is just like a rung above the guy they're going to go up against, I think, for the most part. So,
I don't think that's an outlandish way to look at it, but I also would kind of echo what Pat was saying about after Pivetta. Like, do you really feel any sort of fear going up against any of those Padre pitchers. And I really don't think you should at this point. I think that there have been struggles. There have been guys who, as you said, haven't pitched up to their standards. Maybe their statistics don't exactly match how they've been doing. But you look at what Michael King has done his last few starts. I know that he's still, coming off of an injury, but gave up 8 runs to the vaunted New York Mets, who, as we all saw, really – a veritable buzzsaw coming down the stretch.
Sort of an Imanaga-like start against the Mets, right?
Absolutely. And then also had 6, I think, walks his last 2 starts. Looked really bad against the White Sox. I know he ended up giving up no runs in that game, but that was because it was the White Sox. Like, that was not a great outing for him. And then he only pitched a couple innings against the Diamondbacks. So you can't really draw any sort of conclusions. But when you look at that, when you look at what Dylan Cease has been doing down the stretch for the Padres, like, I look at them and I see a lot of similar flaws to what the Cubs have been dealing with and a lot of similar performances down the stretch. And I know that we've commented extensively about the fact that the Cubs have been limping down the stretch and they barely got into the playoffs and it felt like the sky was falling. Again, it's not like the Padres have been running on all cylinders either. There just are not a lot of teams doing it right now. And the ones that are teams like the Cleveland Guardians, who, I still think would be really crazy to suggest or any sort of a favorite in these playoffs. I think you're just seeing a lot of flawed teams or a lot of banged up teams doing battle. And I think that fans need to be realistic about what that means for the Cubs' chances in this series.
I think where the real edge for the Padres isn't in the rotation. Well, I think it is in the rotation on paper. I think each one of their starters is a rung above the Cubs starters, but it's the fact that they can go to their bullpen earlier and with more confidence than the Cubs can, right? Like, let me ask you this. If a Cub pitcher is struggling in the 4th inning, do you leave him in or do you have to pull him in a 3-game series?
It sure seems like you have to pull them because you need to basically throw everything at the wall in a 3-game series.
So walk me through who in the bullpen, in the Cubs bullpen, if you had to pitch 4 innings, right?
Yeah.
Who do you most feel comfortable with pitching the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning? Let's say one.
It's a shorter list of who I'm comfortable with in the bullpen in general.
No doubt.
In any situation.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at guys like probably Drew Pomeranz is going to get leaned on heavily in that kind of situation. Mm-hmm. I think that Andrew Kittredge, you're definitely relying on, which obviously I know that acquisition kind of got poo-pooed a little bit, but I think that he mostly has been solid. Yeah, I think that those are the
Keller
kind of guys
in the 8th, and
Palencia in the 9th. I think absolutely. I mean, that's kind of by default what you're going to have to do. I mean, you obviously, I don't think you're relying on Taylor Rogers super heavily. I don't think that
he better not be on the roster. Period.
Aaron Savale or I just don't,
Soroka.
I don't see the Cubs. Okay, so Soroka is the interesting one to me because I do think the Cubs are looking at him as the backfill guy if Schultz only goes 3 innings. I really do think Soroka.
I think you're right.
I think they're going to try to get 2 innings out of him or something.
Yeah,
right?
He's your multi-inning guy. He's your multi-inning guy.
That is exactly what they're looking at.
But isn't Assad? Wouldn't you? I don't know. To me, he'd be a more reliable multi-inning guy. But they burned him today.
They have to be looking at it from the veteran perspective, where they think that he's going to pitch better, and if he doesn't have his best stuff, we'll be able to kind of ride through it. Whereas they think that Assad, if he isn't exactly on point early, he's going to do the Jordan Wicks and just go or the Ben Brown and go completely off the rails. I think that's probably the way that they're looking at him.
Can we agree that there won't be a Porter Hodge on the playoff roster?
There better not be.
There
better not be, man.
And there won't be a Ben Brown at this point. Right.
I don't think so. I do, for the record, Jeremy, think that Taylor Rogers is going to be on the roster because I think if you're going to keep cutting guys like Ben Brown off of it, if Javier Assad's not going to be on it, you got to have somebody, and it feels like Rogers might be a guy.
Oof.
I know, man. I know. I'm sorry, but that's not the way it is. That's the way the math works. I do think they're going to carry 12 pitchers, and I think they're looking at it where you're going to have 5 guys that they theoretically could have start, but obviously you're only going to be looking at
they're going to keep Rogers on, right? Because he's a lefty, right? He's a lefty. And Pomerantz and Thielbar are lefties.
I think so.
And that's not a great trio of lefties to rely on in a high leverage situation. So, but it's what you got. That's what
I was
you
going
got.
to say, it's literally what you have to deal with right now.
And we know that like the Padres have like 4 lefties in their lineup, so it's
Well, let's look at the
We've
Cubs
really
lineup.
upset Jeremy now.
Let's just hope for good starting pitching performances because, man, yeah,
by the Cubs.
By the Cubs, please. Yes.
Of course.
Let's look at the Cubs on the offensive side. It has been quite a week for Michael Busch. Glad to see him performing at this level. He's now the team leader in home runs. He led the team with 34 this season. Seiya Suzuki with 32, and Pete Crow Armstrong finishing with 31, which was crazy because we felt like 30 was a no doubt around the All-Star break, and he barely
somehow
got
over the line to 30-30, man.
James, can you name the last time a Cubs team had more than 3 players hit 30 home runs in a year?
If it's happened, it probably only happened once, because wasn't this only the second time they ever had 3 guys hit 30?
It did not happen during the Theo Epstein.
I thought it was.
Bryant
Was it
Rizzo era.
2004? Was it 2004?
That's right. The season everyone hates. The 88 win season that everyone hates.
Like, what an offense! What an
Ramirez,
offense!
I think, and who was the fourth? Alou?
Moises Alou, who had his best year as a Cub in a losing effort. If we had the wild card situation we have today in 2004, the Cubs would have been the most dangerous team that no one would have wanted to play, because that Cubs lineup was stacked.
Yeah.
They had, when healthy, like at the end, they had a Zambrano, they had a Maddox, they had a Pryor, and they had a Wood. It's just that they could never get them healthy, at the same time during the year. Bullpen wasn't that great, but that lineup was monstrous, and that team could have really, in a 3-game series, nobody would have wanted to face that team. Shoot. But of course, we didn't have 3 wildcard teams back then, so they had to disassemble the team and get rid of Sammy Sosa and trade everybody away the next year, and that was that.
My question about the lineup is a guy who didn't hit 30 home runs this year.
Nico Horner.
Disappointed with only 22 home runs is Kyle Tucker. If you have, is Kyle Tucker going to play right field, James, or is he going to take up the DH spot? And what does that do for the lineup?
I think that in an ideal world, you want him playing right field, because I feel like even at a limited level, he's probably still a better right fielder than Seiya Suzuki is. And then when you're looking at the time of day that they're going to be playing games, you need an outfielder that you can trust, because that sky gets real weird in that like late afternoon hour. And so I think when you kind of take that calculus into effect, I deserve. But at the same time, I think that Kyle Tucker is the safer option, at least defensively, out there in right field.
What odds would you have given me on July 1st if I had proclaimed that Ian Happ would hit more home runs than Kyle Tucker this year?
That I would have told you to take a jump into Lake Michigan. I'd have been like, you have completely lost of your sentences. I think Jared needs to consider replacing you. I would have been like, there's just no way. And that's even knowing Ian Happ is always the guy who's going to like have the random surge to goof his numbers at the end of the season. I still would have thought you were crazy.
I do think, though, Jeremy, we had Andy Dolan on back in, was it June? And he was worried that Ian Happ, because his exit velocity was so bad, he was worried he wasn't going to be playable anymore. And I think I went out on a limb and said I still think he'll get close to 20 home runs, as he usually does. I didn't think Kyle Tucker would only hit 22, however. So
yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been way more.
Because he had like 20, right, at the time. So it seemed like he was due for more.
Yeah, having Happ just another year where he gets his numbers. It's you can set your watch to it. He's gonna get he will finish with the numbers that are Ian Happ numbers. So great.
Dansby Swanson did it too somehow.
Sponsored by Connect Roasters.
That's right. And the Cubs lineup, hopefully we don't have to see, is Justin Turner on this playoff roster?
He is. He's got to be on the playoff roster because they played him today. No, because just because he is. Because, he's a veteran and he's 40 and whatnot. He was in the World Series in 2020 and whatever. I mean, like, of course they're going to keep him on the roster. I will say this. If the
you're able to carry one fewer pitchers. So I think that it'll be 14 and 12, and I think that Turner gets in because of that.
The Padres have like 3 really good left-handed relief pitchers. And I think there will come a time when they bring one of them in and you'll see Justin Turner pinch hit for somebody like Michael Bush or maybe even PCA or somebody, and you're going to kind of, it's going to be kind of squeamish and you're going to feel pain to do it, but there'll be some matchup situation in the 8th inning of a game where you have to score.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to see Ballesteros being part of the playoff team. I mean, he came up. He's always fun. He's just a fun guy to have on the roster, and
he's 21 years old.
Yeah, like that's the kind of thing we want to see here. So glad that he's gonna stick around as well.
And I wouldn't mind. I mean, what do you think? And when you look at the roster construction, I mean, I guess you got to keep the 2 catchers, right? You got to keep McGuire and Kelly, assuming that Amaya is not going to miraculously come back in the next 12 hours. But
I haven't heard anything for that.
No.
But what about I mean, I would be inclined, the way things have been going, to keep our friend Kevin too.
I actually think they are going to keep him. I really do.
Because he can play center field if you need to. He can hit a little bit if you need to. There's a lot he can do, and why not have an extra bat? I mean, Willie Castro is the one who's really he's just been disappointing. As he was one of the trade deadline acquisitions. I think at the deadline, the universal thought was, well, Jed really blew it, but Castro was of course a great signing because that made perfect sense, right? He's exactly what you need. And, I don't think anybody disagreed with that at the time. Great utility player, but boy, he's had a rough go of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was just a guy that checked a lot of boxes, and they needed a utility guy. And like you said, they needed somebody that could fill in center field and do all those things. And it just is, it is not worked out whatsoever, and like even a passable performance would have been good, and they just didn't even
he's got a negative 0.4 WAR. His WAR when the Cubs traded for him was 0.3. His WAR now is negative 0.1 for the season, but negative 0.4.
Clearly that's because Craig Counsell just did not give him enough of an opportunity to get his feet wet, Pat.
Clearly
107 plate appearances. So
nope, but not enough.
But do you feel like you still have to keep him on the roster just because if something happened to Nico or Swanson, you'd be stuck?
I mean, what are the other options? I think that's probably the more appropriate question. Just
forfeit.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's Craig Counsell, like player manager. Like, is that something they'd be willing to do?
Is Chase Strump still around in AAA somewhere? I don't know.
Jonathan Long, like, yeah. I looking at the 40-man roster, like, I legitimately have no idea who it would be.
Yeah. Our super deep minor league system has not produced any passable middle infielders that could even be on a bench in an emergency case scenario.
Hey, do you guys remember that one time that the signed Billy Hamilton to a minor league contract just so he could be playoff eligible?
Right. That's right.
He's there now. They got him there now. Like, could they use him now?
I mean, I think they could. If there was an injury, I think they would have an argument, and I think Major League Baseball would let him do it. I also have not heard if Owen Casey's like recovered from his. He's still on concussion protocol, right?
Yeah,
like, I don't think I don't think he's available. So yeah, I think that's another check in the Willie Castro column is that Owen Casey is not probably going to be available, and I don't think you option Carlos Santana if you have any sort of notion that he's going to be.
Right.
Well, let's do quick predictions, and then we'll talk about some of our favorite moments of the season. But is it going 2 games or 3 games? And will it be the Cubs or the Padres? James, we'll start with you.
I'm going to go Padres in 3. I think that, again, it's just a complete coin flip. It would not shock me if either team swept. It would not shock me if the Cubs won in 3, but it just has felt this entire last month and a half that the Cubs have been living on borrowed time and hanging on by the skin of their fingernails. And it just feels like one of those series where the team with the bigger star or the better starting pitcher is going to get that one critical game where everything falls into place. And it just feels like the Padres have more of the guys who are capable of potentially doing that. So I am going to go with the Padres in 3.
Pat?
I think it'll go 3 games. I think the real killer for the Cubs is going to be the Cade Horton injury. I think that was the bridge too far. Like, Kyle Tucker doesn't seem like he's back to being Kyle Tucker. That would be tough enough. But losing Cade Horton, losing your number 1 starter, when you've already lost your number 1 starter in Justin Steele earlier in the year, that'd be a lot for any team to really deal with, I think. And if both teams were 100% healthy up and down their roster, and the Cubs come out with Steele in game 1, Horton in game 2, and Boyd in game 3, my answer would be different. But I just, look, can Colin Ray / Jamison Taillon win a game 3? Sure, why not? But I wouldn't count on it. And I think statistically you'd say the odds would not be in their favor. But that doesn't mean I don't hope they will. And oddly, if whoever wins this series, if it's the Cubs, I think they'll beat Milwaukee, and if it's the Padres, I think they'll lose to Milwaukee. So that's the
yeah, I think you're right too.
They got a real rooting interest in this whole thing, right? Because they know that their fate of their season rests in the Cubs losing the series. Because if not, they're done. They're out. They're eliminated.
I definitely agree with Pat, by the way, and it really pains me to say that I don't think the Padres would beat the Brewers, but I think the Cubs would actually have a better shot of doing it.
The Cubs would beat them in 6, like easy. Not easy.
You mean in 5, right?
In 5.
Yeah.
Sorry. We could beat them in 6 too. I mean, we play it.
Can you imagine a game 5 in Milwaukee if the Cubs were to win that? I'm barely certain that there would be the tailgating scene would just be completely exploded. Like every grill would be on fire after that game.
I feel like we did beat them in 5 just a couple months ago. I don't know what happened, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm seeming to remember the Cubs won the season series against the vaunted Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah. And the last time we played them in a 5-game series at Wrigley in August, we won the first 3 of the first 4, so we wouldn't even had to play game 5. That's the nice part.
And Jacob Mizorowski is, human, and they don't have Jose Quintana right now.
Or Woodruff, Brandon Woodruff.
No, they don't. I think that the Brewers, I would never have said they were bulletproof even with those guys, but I definitely don't think it now.
No, they're done. They're cooked against us.
I'm flipping the coin and saying the Cubs win in 3 games.
Thank God. I need them to win.
Yeah,
I do not want them to win the series. I really don't.
Let me ask you this. So the Cubs are a 92-win team.
They are.
Which I think is more than any of us had anticipated at the beginning of the year. I think it's more than the,
90
any of the forecasts.
Over everybody.
80 wasn't 87.
Yeah,
86, 87. Wasn't that 87 was the number that you heard a lot?
Yeah, you thought Tucker was 3 wins better for your team at least.
Yeah. And so the Cubs just got off to such a great start in April and May, where they're 14 games over 500, including the stupid Tokyo series where they're -2. but even with that, they were 14 over, and then they played 7 games over basically the rest of the way. Had they just played in April and May the same pace that they played June through September, they would have been an 88-win team, which I think would have been more in line with kind of where we thought they were. The fact that they're a 92-win team is a reflection on how they got all those wins early in the year, which, hey, they count, man. I'm not saying they don't count, but I think that's in our psyches when we're looking at them, it's been so long that they've played more like an 86, 87-win team, 88-win team, that it's hard for us to even think of them as a 92-win team because for 4 months, they just haven't played at that pace. It's a psychological trick, right? Unlike, say, 2015 when they were a 500 team and then they won 97 games because they just, blew through the second half. And, we knew they were a good team because we'd been watching them for 3.5 months destroy everybody, right? So I guess the question I have for you two then is, they've made the playoffs, which was certainly a step. And when the Kyle Tucker acquisition meant that they absolutely had to make the playoffs this year, right? Plus, they're just in a retool. They're not in a rebuild. So in year 4, you really do have to make the playoffs, right? I mean, or year 5. In year 5, of a retool, you certainly have to make a playoffs when there are 6 teams in your conference that make the playoffs. So the question, I guess, is then, would it be a successful season for you if the Cubs did not advance past the Padres? So let's say they lost 2 out of 3, given the circumstances of Horton and everything else. Or do you think they need to win this series in order for the season to be a success?
I don't think this series can be the ultimate like tiebreaker just because it is like so reliant on luck, and you can see so many fluky things happen in a best of 3 series. I think that I consider the season a modest success no matter what happens the next couple of days. I think that getting to the postseason, dealing with the struggles that they dealt with down the stretch, and the fact that they somehow managed to mostly like keep the Brewers within eye shots toward the end of the year. Like, yeah, they lost the division fairly early, but Milwaukee could have wrapped that thing up in early September the way the Cubs
I thought we had it wrapped up in early June. Sorry. I don't know
yeah,
where you're
it
coming
certainly
from.
did. All I know is that the Cubs, like, they somehow managed to win more games that I thought they were going to lose than they did last season. It felt like one of those years where you saw the switch flip on that. Like, you had seen them blow a lot of leads last year, and this year it seemed like they somehow managed to overcome poor play or whatever it was to like fluke into a couple of wins here and there. And I do think, again, modest success, and it really kind of goes to show that I think they should have done potentially more at the trade deadline to address some needs, and I think it would have helped them a lot. And so I'm going to just call it a modest success that had the potential to be something more than that.
Let me reframe my question just a bit, James, then we'll get to Jeremy's answer. So if the Cubs lose 5-0 in game 1 and 4-1 in game 2 against the Padres, and Kyle Tucker signs with another team, where are you? Like, where's your thought process at that point?
The same place that I would be if they won the 2 games and then got swept by Milwaukee and Kyle Tucker signed somewhere else. It feels like getting to the playoffs is like, you kind of have to look at that bigger than the result of getting in the playoffs. Now, if they get to like the NLCS, that obviously boosts your season quite a bit more than just getting to the playoffs. But it's so reliant on luck, and there's so many fluky things that happen that I think that it wouldn't take a ton of the shine off, especially since you mentioned the Cade Horton injury and the fact that guys like Boyd and Imanaga have kind of come back to earth and they've regressed. I think that you have to keep those things in mind, and I'm not going to try to draw, I guess, a lot of like broader conclusions based on just the outcome of those couple of games.
For me, I'm a little bit older and I don't have as many years left, but like, if I were to play the lottery, I would view success as winning the lottery, not as like submitting my numbers and losing. Like, so to me, like, you got to win something in order to have it really feel like a success, even a modest 3 game.
Even if it's just them beating the Padres. I mean,
well, it's in the same way that, do you think Pirates fans thought that they had successful seasons when they were winning 98, 99 games a year and losing a 1-game playoff to the Giants and Cubs in back-to-back years? I don't think so. You know what I mean?
No.
Like,
no, certainly not.
Yeah.
No,
Jeremy, what do you think?
It was Theo Epstein who said that just try to get there as many times as possible because of the randomness of the postseason. So,
and if the Cubs are making the postseason 4 out of every 5 years, I'd be like, oh yeah, we could lose this one. That's fine.
That's the key to.
That's the big key. Really,
once every 5 years, then it's like you gotta capitalize on it, right? I can't wait another 5 years.
How they follow it up.
Yeah,
and it's how they follow it up, right?
And that's why I mentioned Kyle Tucker, because like like if you take a step back next year in talent going into next year, that's going to be a little bit depressing, right? No,
boy, they better not. Boy, they better not try to run.
We've been saying that for 3 years though, and every year it's like, I thought we were going to do more.
Well, but here's the thing. Next year they could absolutely run a less talented team out there under the guise of we can't commit ourselves to anything with the upcoming work stoppage.
That is the absolute wrong way to approach it, considering the fact you have so many contracts coming off the books. Like, if Jed Hoyer tries to pull that crap, that's unacceptable.
I've heard this team tell me things like, we're going to clear this room and we're going to use this money. We're going to clear all this money at the beginning of the season so we can have it for the trade deadline.
And then we get Daniel Descalso. Hey.
So next year is really a pivotal year, right? Because after next year, the Cubs lose Boyd, Imanaga, Suzuki, Happ, Warner, everyone, all their catchers. I mean, there's just, that's the, now leaving aside Tucker, who, they'll probably lose this year, but that's when, as Jeremy pointed out, half the team becomes a free agent. And I don't think they're going to sign any of those guys. No offense. Because they're older. They're all like, they're going to be 33 or 4 or 5. Like,
you don't want your core to be in their 30s already.
No,
you're
definitely not.
You're not going to do that. So
I wonder, though, if like a guy like Nico Horner, if his skill set makes them think that maybe they want to hold on to him. But other than that, yeah, there's no way they're bringing back Ian Happ. There's no way they're re-signing Seiya Suzuki. Like, I think that if they don't re-sign Kyle Tucker, it's going to be a dramatically different 2027 roster. I think it's going to be PCA and a bunch of dudes.
Right, because Horner and Bush, right? Horner would be 30 the first year they re-sign him. So I don't see them going more than 3 years on a deal with him. You know what I mean? If you can get 4 years or
going more than that, though, that's the thing.
Other than the fact that he's giving you six WAR every year, whatever that.
Which is crazy.
Crazy.
Realize there's value to that.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's got 6.1 WAR, and he's hit 7 home runs. 4 of them were in the last month, right? But like you look at his numbers, and you're like, boy, I guess I just don't understand WAR well enough. But like, I get the defensive value and stuff. He's a second baseman for her. He must be the best second baseman in history, because 6.1 WAR is really impressive. He's whatever. I don't know, Jeremy. What do you think? What's the success for you?
Yeah, it'll be getting there in the spot that they're in right now. We just thought it was going to be through winning the division. We never thought that this was a 90-plus win team.
That was the whole point. Kyle Tucker to win the division, right?
Right, and get Jed a new contract. Those were the two things that were the goal of this season.
We got Jed that contract.
We got Jed the contract.
Pushed hard on that one, yeah. Well, the Soroka deal kind of put us over the top. Who are we kidding?
So just getting to the coin flip random round was kind of the goal for the team this season, and like they accomplished that. And I think
the goal is to win the division, though. That's not the coin flip round.
It'll get you in the exact same spot because they were not going to be pegged to. They were not, through all the projections we talked about, through all the things we did. Nobody saw them as being a team that would win more than the 90-plus games that either the East or West was going to produce.
I guess if we had the Brewers record, right? Because as it turns out, the Dodgers were far, after winning 11 of their first 12 or whatever, they were far from great. I mean, if the Cubs really hadn't thrown up all over themselves the last couple weeks, we would have had a better record than the Dodgers. We did almost the whole year, I mean, that's the crazy part.
Yeah, and look at all the injuries the Dodgers had to kind of absorb, and then think about the Cubs trying to do the same thing. It never would have happened in a million years.
Yeah, because they have depth. That's the thing. When you have depth, you can do that.
It's amazing what money can do for you.
I mean, the Cubs finished 1 game behind the Dodgers on the season, and I still think those 2 games in Tokyo should have been exhibition games. So,
that wasn't a home run, Shohei. It.
Never will be. We know it was not. No.
And but for those 2 games in the middle of spring training, how absurd was that? Cubs had a better record than the Dodgers once the season actually started. So, like a Cubs winning the division and getting a bye in the first round, I guess, would have been, to me, the success, right?
I think so.
That's a real successful season.
Well, hopefully we'll be talking about it next week, that they sweep the Padres, and then they're well on their way to beating the tar out of the Brewers, and we can just have
then bygones at that point. Yeah.
Yep. Then it's like it's all gravy at that point.
And the Dodgers will be sitting there with the Padres. The entire NL West will be on the sidelines. It'll be the Reds, Brewers, Cubs. Fox will slit their wrists after the TV ratings come out. For some of those.
Legitimately, if it were a Mariners-Reds World Series, I would never want anything again in my life. That would be just the absolute zenith, man. It'd be so great.
Looking over at the American League real quick, what a finish. Toronto is a team I follow closely in the American League. I went to many of the games in Toronto this season, and watching them down the stretch, they win 4 in a row while the Yankees win 8 in a row to finish tied atop the AL East, and for the Toronto Blue Jays to win via tiebreaker to win the division. Just absolutely
Yankees
incredible.
Yankees went 8-0 in their last 8 games. They came close.
Yeah, unbelievable. What a finish it was down the stretch there. And they, Toronto's got a ton of injuries as well. Their pitchers decided to implode, and just a fun finish there wasn't a ton of playoff races, to watch down the stretch. So
it was just all seeding, man.
Yeah.
The Astros and Tigers came down to the very end, but the lack of Kyle Tucker kind of Astros weren't quite good enough.
Bad injury luck, man. The Astros.
Yeah, Alvarez and everything, and yeah.
So let's wrap up this podcast by talking about now that the regular season's over. I did want to get your guys' opinion, your thoughts, your memories on some of your favorite moments from this past Cubs regular season. Pat, we'll start with you. Tell me one of your favorite moments from the regular season.
I have two favorite moments from games that I attended, and I'm not even going to count opening day, which was a win, which is always a favorite moment when the Cubs win opening day, only because it was like game 9 at the time, and the season started like a month before. But no, so the first one, and probably my greatest moment of the year, was that early, I guess it would have been April Friday game against Arizona, when Kyle Tucker went crazy and the Cubs had that huge comeback, come from behind win when the wind was howling out, and they had that dramatic come from behind win. That was just a lot of fun. That reminded me of the old Sosa days. Frankly, it was the 13-11 game back on April 18th.
Oh, you mean the game the Cubs gave up 10 runs and then immediately scored 6 more to take the lead back? Yeah,
it was exactly. Like it was like, oh no, they're gonna blow it, and then to come back and not blow it. In fact, I think they set the record for 16 runs scored in one inning between the two teams. But that was a great game. Kyle Tucker did he have 2 home runs in that game?
Was that the stretch? Was that the stretch where he won?
Yeah, Carson Kelly had 2 home runs. Yeah, Carson Kelly had 2 home runs. Tucker had the triple. That was it, as I recall. Anyway, but that was a great game. Seiya Suzuki had a home run in the 8th in that game, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. The other game that I remember very fondly, another Friday game. There's something about Friday Wrigley games when it's nice out and the Cubs win that kind of makes it all feel really good. And this would have been a game in May 16th. It was a hot day. Cade Horton, in his second or third start with the Cubs, maybe pitched well with a wind blowing out at like 30 miles an hour, and the Cubs blew out the White Sox 13-3. And that was the PCA game. That's the game where PCA was having a great season to start, but that was a game where he had the 3-run home run. He was 4 for 5, drove in 6 runs. And the Cubs just blew the doors off the White Sox. And Cade Horton, to his credit, went through 5 innings, gave up 3 runs. But boy, he gave up like 2 solo home runs in the first inning, and you're like, oh, this is going to be rough. But then, what could you do? I mean, the wind was like howling out. It was crazy. The Cubs caught up and went ahead, and Horton held them the rest of the game, and the Cubs won that game. That was a lot of fun. It started. The Cubs swept that series, and those April and May, that's when the Cubs were rocking and rolling. That's when they were 14 games over 500. And that was actually 16 games over 500 if you don't count March. And yeah, those are my favorite games. As the season progressed, there were some good moments, but it seemed like every good game was followed up by like a bad game pretty much for the last 3 months.
What about you, James?
I mean, you could pretty much pick any of the moments involving PCA, the taking the extra base kind of moments where, like, you score on a wild pitch and like all that stuff, or hit a home run off the scoreboard, whatever it was. Like he provided so many moments like that during the season. And then not to mention all of just the absolutely ridiculous, 4% catch probability plays that he would make out there in center field. Like having a player that's capable of that level of highlight reel play is always just its own reward. But I think that the one thing there's a few moments that Cade Horton had during the season I'm definitely going to remember. Him out dueling Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh. Paul Skeens who had a
that was a great game.
2 ERA this season, got out dueled by Cade Horton in Pittsburgh. That was remarkable. And then the one that really stood out to me was he had really just gotten shellacked, like just annoyingly, like kind of poked and prodded by the Brewers. That 5-game series, Pat, you alluded to earlier this season, where Horton just didn't have it that day. Came out his next start against the Angels and just absolutely shoved. I think he had like 20 pitches through like 4 innings that day. The Angels could not touch him. And in a moment when the vibes for the Cubs were honestly fairly low because they had only won 3 out of 5 against Milwaukee, the fact he was able to go out there in Anaheim and to pitch like that in that moment and to just completely like shut the door on that team just showed like the resiliency that he showed the entire second half of the season. And it was just moments like that where you look at Cade Horton and you think to yourself, you know what, the Cubs might have something in that guy. That is the guy that even if he doesn't have his best stuff is going to be able to give you competitive outings. And then when he does have that stuff, that is going to be a pitcher who can potentially do some special things. And so I think that between him and BCA, there were moments this season where the young guys really came to the forefront and really kind of electrified the crowds in the places they were and really kind of helped what was kind of a bummer of a second half of the season, considering all the struggles the team had.
And I should point out, I was in attendance when Cade Horton threw a no-hitter against the Braves and left with a 1-0 lead after 5 innings, and we lost the game. So, those first 5 innings were great, though. And
that 5-1 loss, man.
If only they had known he was going to break a rib later on, they could have maybe let him go with an extra inning or two and just see what happened.
Instead of only throwing 75 pitches. Yeah, I think they yanked him. They did that a few times this season where he was like only 70 pitches into an outing and get 5 or 6 innings, and they were like, okay, no, we're going to
do it with a 1-hitter, but I'm old school. Don't take out a guy with a no-hitter.
For all we know, he could have broken a second rib if he had pitched those extra innings.
Right.
For me, a couple of things. I agree 100%. The PCA season in totality had so many great moments, so much fun, so great to see him do the things he did, especially early on, and to watch him get out, like to have a good, strong finish after, like to get out of the funk that he was in for a long stretch of the second half of the season there.
The funkiest of funks.
Yeah. So it was good to see that. One of my favorite things this season, Matthew Boyd's pickoff move. Like,
oh yeah,
so much fun. Like multiple times in a game, he picked off a guy. Just super impressive, really fun, and a great season overall for Boyd. Down the stretch, kind of running out of gas and having some sketchy performances. But my God, he over exceeded all of the expectations you could have possibly had for that guy. Everyone was just wondering when his arm was going to fall off. And it turned out that he was able to pitch like dominant style the entire 3/4 of the season. So it was really impressive seeing him play. And I think the Justin Turner early August game against Baltimore, where he had the walk-off home run, where he was the most surprised person in the building that ball went out. That was just one of those moments where it's like, oh, this is one of those seasons where like this happens to, we're doing this to other teams, where other teams were doing it to us so many times over the past few seasons. And I'll leave it on a Cade Horton note as well, because his season was so incredible. When Horton pitched in Toronto, he struck out 8 guys in 5 2/3, and he had just 1 hit. And it was one of those performances where a lot of the people I was with from Toronto were all texting me and during the game and saying, holy cow, this guy's great. This guy's incredible. It was great to hear kind of as Cade Horton was exposed to other fan bases saying, you got a guy here. It's not just us looking through our rose-colored prospect glasses that we often have. Hearing it from other fans as I'm watching Cade Horton dominate in Toronto against a really good Blue Jays team, that was a really impressive.
It's nice to hear that from fans, because the statisticians and the baseball projection folks don't think very highly of Cade Horton. So it's nice to see. No, it's the Kyle Hendricks, Mark Burley situation. It's nice to see. It's like, yeah, but go watch him for real, and don't just look at numbers on a spreadsheet. you might see it differently. Did you guys see any history made? I mean, I had that game with the 16 runs in an inning. I saw Ryan Pressey make history when he came into a game in extra innings against the Giants and not fail to retire a single batter after facing 8 in a row in an extra inning game. Those are the only 2, I think, actual historical events I went to.
I saw Soroka leave after
You're sitting next to me
in his debut.
Yeah.
We were both at that disappointing performance. But
I think I was at Ian Happ's. I was at Ian Happ's 1000th game. That was about it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's a good
it was cool. It was a cool moment.
I would like to give a special shout out to Ian Happ because he really struggled early in the year, and the way he stuck through it and then came back in August and September and put up the numbers that he did, which are above average numbers, is a testament to his competitiveness. I think he's that kind of guy, so good for him. That Friday game against Boston that you alluded to, Jeremy, right after the All-Star break. I always like going to that when the Cubs are hosting right after the All-Star break, that first weekend. It's always fun to go to the first game. And we beat the Red Sox that Friday, and it felt like we still felt like things were going the right direction at that time. Everybody was still hitting well. Pitching was good. I think Colin Ray might have started that game, crying out loud, but he did well. And that was fun. No, it was Soroka started it, right? And then we had to bring in Colin Ray or something because he only made two innings and then got hurt.
Yeah. It's funny because I took a picture because for the post that I was going to put for that week's podcast, I took a picture of the little banner scoreboard above the bullpen that said pitcher Soroka making his Cubs debut tonight on his 28th birthday, and I'm like, oh, this will be a perfect screenshot for the post when I put up the podcast.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of great moments, a lot of fun times, a lot of a season where we haven't seen the Cubs, really have a season where it was like, oh no, this team should be competing for the division. This team should be in the playoffs, and we had those expectations all season, and so it made it really fun when they were meeting those expectations.
And unlike the last 2 years, whenever they got to the point where they were nosediving, it felt like, oh boy, here we go. They pulled out of it, like you said, James. That series in Anaheim when did they sweep them, I think, or they at least they won the first 2.
They did. Yes, they did.
Sweep them. And they would do that. They would go out there and they'd have a good road trip, or they'd come home and they'd get healthy at home. Like they never quite hit rock bottom. Right? They were always right when you thought the floor was going to drop out, they would go 4-2 the next week, and then 4-3 the week after that, and kind of settle the thing. So, which is a stark contrast to the last 2 years, where when things fell, they fell hard.
Yeah, it's there were quite a few of those series where, some of those Reds series where after Brewers series where you're like, oh no, this is where this feels like it's got rock bottom vibes coming up here.
You sweep the Pirates and then you get swept by the Reds in 4 games.
Right?
It's like, come on. And then you come home and get beat by the Mets and you're like, oh boy. But then you win the last 4 games a year or 3 games a year. It's like they were able to do that. So credit to Craig Counsell and the coaches to keep people level. I think they've got good veterans on that team too that help with that, so that they don't get rattled when, like that 4-game losing streak in Cincinnati was the first 4-game losing streak of the year. It ended up being 5 games the next game. So that's really good. The fact that they were so consistent all year that they didn't lose. Hell, they didn't lose 3 in a row until September, I think, right? They were just really, they'd lose a tough game. They'd go right back at it the next day and win. And that's testament to a good game. And hopefully that will help them in the playoffs.
Yeah, the first quarter of the season, they didn't win on a Sunday. And it didn't.
Right? They didn't play on Thursdays and they didn't win on Sundays.
Exactly.
That was the strategy. Yeah.
Sounded like the Bears.
That's right.
Yes.
Hey now. Hey, all right.
Bears win on Sundays now, James.
Yes.
They certainly do.
Well, and with that, I think our playoff preview is in the books. We will be back to recap the the wild card series, and hopefully preview the division series.
Would it be great if we swept them 2 games and they weren't even close?
That would be awesome, man.
Oh, it feels so good. That would feel a lot better.
All Pat can think about is 1984 right now.
Well, that 1984 would have been great because we won the first 2. Unfortunately, that was a 5-game series. That's the problem. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I want. I want what happened in 84. The first 2 games, we blew them out in the first game and won the second game in very clean fashion. Or like when we played the Cardinals. Remember when they came to town in 2015 and we just beat their brains in with home runs. Something like that would be great.
Well, I will be at the game on Wednesday, game 2. So hopefully we will be celebrating a sweep and a victory.
They're great seats.
Boy.
They are, yes. And with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. So make sure that you stay subscribed to this podcast because as the postseason rolls and the Cubs continue to play, we could be dropping episodes at a moment's notice.
Games start at 2:08 p.m., so we could be dropping episodes anytime.
Yes, so make sure that you stay subscribed to the podcast through audio channels, your podcatcher of choice, and of course, YouTube is where you can get the video version of this podcast. So with that, we're going to start to wrap up the podcast. James, please let our listeners know where they can find your work on the internet and follow you on your social media platforms.
I'm on Blue Sky and Instagram, not the biggest social media guy, but definitely post a lot on Blue Sky about the Cubs. And then all of our coverage in NBC Chicago. I know we're going to have reporters at Wrigley all week long. Lots of great stuff coming. Definitely looking forward to covering the Cubs, being in the playoffs for the first time in 5 years. And especially being able to have fans in the stands is going to be really cool. It's always a great atmosphere at Wrigley when the Cubs are in the postseason.
We did it in 2020. I forgot about that.
No, I still don't count. I don't count any of that as being the playoffs. Like 2018. It's 2018
won a
for
division
me.
title, dude. I'm looking forward to that and looking forward to all the great coverage we're going to do at NBC this week. And we'll hopefully be doing it well into October. Hopefully I'm having to worry about, I have to do the Chicago Marathon coverage today and Cubs coverage.
Yes.
Oh, man. You know what? Please
Good problems.
Give me those problems.
Awesome. Thanks for taking time to hang out with us and talk Cubs. Always a blast. Time flies when we're having fun, and it's been fun all season long. And thanks to all of our patrons. Make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms at Wrigleyville Nat, of course. WrigleyvilleNation.com for all those links. And with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.